Well, every campaign in the United States, as in any democratic country, is driven primarily by personalities. So at the beginning in the Democratic campaign last year, or a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, most people assumed that Senator Hillary Clinton from New York would be the nominee. I certainly admire Senator Clinton, but I thought it was time for a change, and a very small group of us on the Democratic Party side, the Latin American group, decided to go with Senator Obama. Now, when we decided that, our friends on the Clinton side said we were committing suicide, that Clinton would win. Well, Senator Clinton fought a very good campaign and did not win. Senator Obama did. So our job in the campaign on the Latin American side, and there was an African group, and of course a Middle Eastern group, and a European group, and then functional groups, was try to prepare forward-looking papers in the event that Senator Obama did win the nomination and had to fight a campaign against what we thought would be a very tough opponent, Senator John McCain from Arizona, who did not turn out to be a very tough opponent, as a matter of fact. After he chose Sarah Palin, the governor of Alaska, as his running mate, the campaign then became more about Senator Palin and her personality and her comments than it did really about the issues. So the Obama campaign really had a very open field to play on after Senator Clinton graciously left the race and endorsed Senator Obama. And on the Latin American side, what we wanted to do is to break as much as possible with the very unfortunate policy options of the George W. Bush administration. Cuba was one of those important ones. We urged the senator, and which he did in his important speech in Miami in 2008 with regard to Latin America, that he would allow remittances to be sent back to Cuban families from the United States. He would allow Cuban Americans to travel freely to Cuba. That was done immediately after the president became the president in January of this year. We also urged him to drop the embargo. That's where the reality of politics comes into play. From an academic point of view, it's very nice to tell someone running for president he should drop the embargo against Cuba. To try to do that with the American Congress at his back, you just can't do it. And so we were turned down. But on issue after issue, there was a very healthy debate within the campaign over what our relationship should be with Venezuela, for example. We had our ambassador withdrawn from Caracas. The Venezuelan ambassador had been sent home from Washington. How do you deal with someone like Hugo Chavez? Hugo Morales, who is the indigenous leader of Bolivia, what should our attitude be towards him? Very anti-American, apparently. The new government in Ecuador, very anti-American, anti-private property, anti-foreign investment, about to oust the United States from one of its major military bases on the mainland. All these were very tough issues because, again, we had to try to put ourselves in the position of the candidate and the vice presidential candidate who had to answer questions from both political parties and under very tough circumstances. So it wasn't my first campaign, it was probably my last. But every campaign, as I said, is driven by personalities, both by the candidate as well as by their principal advisors. Well, it's very controversial. There's an op-ed piece in the New York Times this week by David Brooks saying that President Obama has sold out to the interests on Capitol Hill. I don't believe that. I think what's happening is the president is now the president. He's no longer a presidential candidate, and he has to take into consideration the realities on Capitol Hill because we are a government of equal powers. A good case in point, I think, is the nomination of Sonia Sotomayor, the first Hispanic to the Supreme Court. A brilliant choice, but the president was warned by people in his own administration and on Capitol Hill that it would have been much safer to go with a nice white man. The president chose not to do so, very wisely, I think. The hearings went very well. The Republican Party disgraced itself in the questioning of Judge Sotomayor, and my sense is next month, in August, in 2009, she'll be confirmed as the first Hispanic woman to be appointed to the United States Supreme Court. Very important breakthrough. So that certainly is not giving in to the established figures on the Hill. Negotiation, of course. The president is a great negotiator. The health care plan, which is under consideration right now, very tough, very expensive, very controversial. There's going to be compromise. There has to be. This is the way of American politics works. Immigration is next. There'll have to be compromise with the governors and Congress on immigration issues. So every issue that the president picks to fight, he really does have to build a coalition. He can't do things alone. This is not an autocracy, thank heaven. On foreign policy, he needs to have a consensus. The Bush administration did build a good roadmap with India. Secretary of State Clinton is in India, building on that. And so in many ways, continuity is important. If we think the policies were correct in the previous administration, you don't throw everything out. The president was in Moscow recently. Many of us are very skeptical about making very much progress on nuclear disarmament with the current government in Moscow, but President Clinton has, Secretary Clinton and President Obama are very much committed to nuclear disarmament. So my sense is that was a good call, that the State Department and the White House were together on that issue. Whether or not we'll make any progress remains to be seen, but the President has put down a benchmark, and I think that, again, is something that will need to be discussed with Congress as we move down the road in 2009, 2010. My sense is the President is moving carefully on all of these. He understands perfectly well that he's a somewhat controversial figure with some people in the United States and outside, but he also understands that he has star power. And that's a very difficult and delicate set of issues to balance. You know, stars often are not very good policymakers. Most policymakers aren't stars. Obama happens to be both. Just look at the audience he receives when he goes to Europe or to Africa or any of his foreign trips so far. So what he's trying to do, I think, is to rather methodically, and that may be why the New York Times thinks he's giving in to the old interests, rather methodically establish a pattern of decision-making that has widespread public support and widespread party support. Our Democratic Party now has 60 seats in the Senate, more or less, which should give us a foolproof vote, but it does not. Democratic senators never vote altogether, so there's still a need to reach out across the aisle to the very few moderate centrist Republicans, and he's doing that. Some in the Democratic Party think that's he's being a traitor to his own party. That's ridiculous. What he's doing is practicing politics the way you do it in the United States. And so every day is really a judgment call, whether it's on nuclear disarmament, whether it's visiting India, whether it's making comments about the current crisis in Honduras, whether or not it is to send back our ambassador to Caracas, Venezuela. Do we explore the possibility of restoring diplomatic relations with Bolivia? Is it worth it? These are all judgments that have to be made in the context of a very complicated world. There's either a bombing in Jakarta, or more soldiers have been killed in Afghanistan, or there's more pressure in Great Britain to take the Brits out of Afghanistan because they are now being murdered as well. And these have to be debated in the context of both Congress, which provides the money for all of this, as well as American public opinion that is not happy that these wars have gone on now year after year after year, and more young Americans are sacrificing their lives in faraway places that most Americans don't really have a great deal of interest in. And so the President's job is to really maintain public support and morale for completing wars he did not begin, nor did the Democratic Party, but which he inherited, and in political terms he has no option but to close those down as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But in the meantime, more people are going to die, and that's just a tragic part of the legacy that President Obama has inherited from the Republicans.